which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome those of you who are viewing from home and those of you who came out this evening up here to join us. At this time, do we have public participation?
Hi, Stephen Henry. Should be enough copies for all the board members at least. Letter that we received from this, signed from the 7th grade team at Henry Wilson, regarding parent-teacher conferences, where parents are invited to spend all of 2.5 minutes with each teacher. For parent conferences, they're going to do speed conferences, I guess inspired by speed dating. 2.5 minutes for our 7th graders to find out how they're doing and what's going on, as we're trying to increase parent involvement with the schools. I think that's a real slap in the face to the parents, that's how important we are. We're worth 2.5 minutes of their time for our conferences.
Usually I don't respond. I'm not necessarily going to respond. I am going to ask the question of Ms. Vaughn. It looks like it says that we have a 2-hour window designated for conferences. What's going on the other 4 hours?
It's an early release day, and we had spoken with the union about possibly doing conferences into the evening and then providing comp time the following day, which is the professional development day. The union had voted against having that time for evening conferences and doing the comp time. So right now we have this time, and I am looking to see what other time we can do to increase that availability for conference time for teachers.
Now, November 9th, which is a Thursday,
is scheduled for professional development currently.
Okay.
And that was on the calendar that was provided to you.
And approved by the FTA. Okay.
Why did we think that, I don't remember us really discussing that. I'm sure it was on the calendar. Why did we think that a full day wasn't necessary anymore for parent conference day?
I wasn't looking at it as only being a half day. I had been planning either that time or the comp time into the next day. Was reminded that the association had decided that that was not something that they were looking to do. We can certainly reschedule it so that half of the professional development time the next day is also open for conferences if we need to do that. But that is going to shift some other things, and if that needs to be, so be it.
If I may follow up then. If this was the result of a union vote, I might remind the union that there was a vote last year that I think from the taxpayers that went in their favor. So they might want to reconsider that vote that really puts parents in a tough spot. So,
Thank you, Mr. Henry.
Have a good night. I got to run.
Thank you.
Thank you.
More public participation? Did I hear it?
I do.
Just remember to state your name for the record.
Excuse me?
Just remember to state your name for the record.
Yes,
Yeah.
Laurel Bashon, National Junior Honor Society Advisor. We're going to send out flyers. I just wanted to let you guys know that the National Junior Honor Society is going to do a fundraiser, a Savers Fund Drive is what it's called, and Savers is like a big, huge thrift store in Newington that pays per pound for clothing and gently used household items, small household items. And we're going to have that at the old fire station downtown in the parking lot on November 18th from 10 to 3. So if you could spread the word.
Thank you. Any other public participation? Okay.
they on
All right.
here? The students, are they on here somewhere?
We
I
have
think
some
they're
students
down
that
here
are
under
addressing
new
us.
business. Do you wanna-
They're under new business, we can certainly shift that if you'd like to do so.
Is this the senior class trip?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we have some students here to talk about senior class trip, so why don't we kind of jump down to that so that you don't have to sit here through all the exciting things that we do. Who's the spokesperson?
I think they're looking to go to the podium in a group?
Yes. that was
Okay,
the plan.
okay.
Safety in numbers.
Yeah.
Just take a minute. I just need to dig out a few papers here for that. Sorry.
Are you, Brian, are you speaking to it?
Yes, I would,
Okay.
I did ask permission, and I was told that I may join them. I just need to get up and join them on a podium.
Okay. Can we have each one of you just kind of lean into the mic and just state your name for the record so that we know who we're speaking with?
I am Cynthia Langley. I am Erin Wolforth.
I'm Charles Withers.
I'm Nicole Gerlach.
And I am Brian Zawacki.
Thank you.
So
that?
basically, the senior class wants to go to Florida for their class trip. We will be there for 3 days, and we have like a bunch of like things planned. We have a package, and it's roughly about $725 per person, and we want like about 25 to go. And Brian has more about like financial.
Yes. First and foremost, if any of you want to look at the package yourself, I do have a copy here. It's $725 per 4 in a room for a minimum of 25 people. I apologize that I did not make
We can share.
copies. As far as finance goes, we are very aware that obviously over $700 is a very expensive price per person for a class trip. That being said, the class of 2018 is very confident that we can easily lower the per person price by doing lots and lots of fundraisers. Many fundraisers from the class of 2018 have been very successful in the past, and that's all the more reason for us to believe we're going to be gaining a very considerable profit from many more fundraisers. For example, we have later in February the bingo night, which has historically been a very large fundraiser for senior classes here at Farmington High School. In addition, we do have the staff breakfast in December. We are going to be planning obviously various different small fundraisers throughout the year. We had a Yankee Candle fundraiser that actually just ended yesterday that we're waiting to determine the actual numbers for, but from what I heard, it was actually very successful. Between that and our class dues, and I want to say sponsors as well, especially for the bingo night, the senior class is very confident that we can definitely lower the price from $725 per person to something that's a lot more practical to pay, even when we are considering, for example, senior banquet, graduation. We have talked with the seniors, and to my knowledge, they are fine with a less expensive senior banquet in favor of going to Orlando. In fact, I have votes here from a survey we gave our class, if you would like to know the specific preferences, is as proof that, yes, the senior class would like to go specifically to Orlando, and how much they are willing to pay for it.
I believe you. How many seniors have indicated that they would like to go?
1/3 of the seniors so far on this survey alone, which was 20. That being said, we have spoken with others because aside from that 20, the votes were scattered all over the place, from like Cape Cod to New Hampshire to Vermont, and we have spoken with them, and to my knowledge, many of the seniors are very willing to still go to Orlando, even if that wasn't what they initially voted.
Okay.
So it's what we need is a minimum of 25 seniors, and none of us see a problem with being able to get 25 seniors. Through fundraisers, through their being able to help out the class with the fundraisers and paying class dues. For instance, last year, seniors were able to work off their class dues if they couldn't pay them outright, and do the same with their prom prices. And that very much helped a lot of people attend our prom, and we feel that we can definitely reduce the amount that each senior has to pay to go on the class trip down to Orlando.
Who are the senior class advisors?
Mrs. Sheff and Mrs. Tebow.
And are either of those individuals here tonight?
Negative.
Do those individuals know that you're presenting tonight?
Yes.
Yes.
To my knowledge, we were asked because we were told that you wanted to see us specifically stand for our class. And we are all very much willing to do that, and we very much want to do that.
Is there a recommendation from Dr. Moore or from?
Real quick.
Yeah.
And we also thought about the people that can't just outright pay whatever it comes out to, and so we also want to set up a payment plan that would help students pay an affordable amount over time.
Okay. Typically, when we get these kind of requests, the advisors are here. I think that's important because if we have questions.
And that may have been, when I communicated with the advisors, I said typically, the board is interested in having the students present
Yeah.
their case. And so they may have misunderstood
Yeah.
that as, then we're not here.
Along with
not
that,
what I
we usually
intended.
get a recommendation or some thoughts from the principal and the superintendent. I guess my question is, are we ready to do all that tonight? Have there been enough adult conversations along with you folks who are young adults too, to be able to make a recommendation and answer questions that the board may have?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we are.
Okay. Dr. Moore, can you, either that, Dr. Moore, just take Mr. Frieda's microphone, whatever's easier.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll let them have that microphone. When I first came on board, this was one of the topics that I was initially approached about, was the senior class trip, and I will tell you that there is a lot of excitement that's being generated around the students going to Florida, to the point that they're trying to figure out how they can make it happen for more students than not. And that's been one of my points, is I would like to have a trip that's most inclusive of all the students who would like to go. And to that end, they are coming up with several ideas for fundraising, and I would encourage them to continue to do that. I think at this point in time, it's incumbent that they kind of start booking this and working through the things that they need to do in order to have the trip happen.
And in my back and forth with the advisors who had approached me early on and said, is this even doable? And I said, well, I think that's partly something that you need to talk to the class about. Is this something that if enough of the students feel strongly about wanting to attend, it becomes more doable in that? But because if they're motivated to do the fundraising, it's much more likely to happen. I did tell them that I wanted to be sure that it was as accessible to as many students as possible. That was my criteria. Initial costs that I had been shared were a little bit less than this, but things shift. And when we had first come with, is a trip to Florida out of the question, Magna said, okay, it's not necessarily out of the question, but again, you need to keep the costs down and you need to make this available to, I don't want this to be a senior class trip for 5. It needs to be truly a class trip as opposed to these few get to go and the rest get to stand in Manchester and wave goodbye. So I think it's an opportunity that certainly generated a lot of interest, and probably more interest than we've seen in a few other things recently. So at that, I'm loath to say no. It's going to take a lot of fundraising on their part to make this viable. I don't think it's beyond them. I think it's going to be a ton of work. And so if you're willing to put in the work, I'm not looking to say no, but with the caveat that it's going to be a ton of work.
Questions from the board?
I noticed that a lot of the meals aren't included in that, so that puts that price up a little bit higher than that. There are 5 meals that you have to come up with on your own. So that's,
Who's packing the PB&J?
Yeah.
She raised her hand.
I just think that it's going to be more expensive than the $7.25. So just plan on more than that, because you can't eat for free.
And you're not
You could
going
ship
to...
yourself a box.
Okay.
Should be suckable.
Other questions?
I just had a question kind of along your lines. When I noticed that you were traveling between destinations, I wasn't sure what the transportation was in regards to that and how you would, if that was involved in that amount that you mentioned.
Actually, I looked at the packet myself, and to my knowledge, the transportation such as bus and the like and complimentary chaperones are included in the cost as well as the fare.
Oh, between the destinations as well?
Yes.
Yes,
Oh,
the
that's
seven-
included.
that is included in the 725 put on there.
Okay.
Among other things. They actually have a list on, I want to say, page 3, I'm counting each single side as an individual page in that respect.
Oh, okay. I may have
Because
just
it
read
has
it
a
quickly.
full list of what's included in that charge.
Perfect.
Yeah, local transfers to all events listed in the tour package.
Okay.
Mrs. Cardinal?
What is the name of the tour company in Florida that you're using?
Graduates on tour.
Graduates on Tour. Who did the legwork to check them out? Their reviews? Advisors, great. And they're fully insured.
That's also included on here. They show $1 million liability insurance, $1 million personal error and omissions insurance.
Excellent. Just some feedback. I think you've done excellent on your research, and in your presentation, it's very clear. One side note, I happen to stumble upon in my other ongoings that holistically, there's one document, single source, where each class that's doing fundraising and each organization that's doing fundraising on behalf of different groups within the schools have put in one central location all the different fundraisers they're planning throughout the school year. That's excellent, because we worry all the time about overtaxing the givers of the community. So good job to the seniors for putting your input in there.
Thank you. We actually, during the first meeting, actually got a look at a full list on that the advisors presented us with all the fundraisers each class was doing, and it was designated to each class.
Yes.
So
yes,
that helped us
yes.
with planning a lot.
That's excellent. I think what it's doing is giving, it's springboarding more brainstorming on different, new, innovative fundraisers that could be going on, different spins. So that's an unintended consequence, I think, unintended benefit. You said a third said that Florida was their first choice, but others that...
Sorry.
But the others that said Florida wasn't their first choice, they would still be very happy to go to Florida.
The general opinion, to my knowledge, yes.
How many responded to your survey?
Do you mean the survey at the beginning of the year? We actually, this was during a senior class meeting at the beginning of the year, so we got everyone that was in the library to respond. I can actually count up the votes that were recorded, if you like.
If you don't mind, real quick, I just would like to understand what a third represents compared to 25 people. Is it close?
20 of 60 people. So we are not very far off from the 25 benchmark.
Okay.
And the others, like I said, they were scattered. For example, 1 for New Hampshire, 3 for Cape Cod, 7 for New York City, 1 for Vermont, 5 for Virginia Beach, 17 on Boston/New England. And those were the notable ones.
Okay. What will happen if you hit 20, actually put in their deposit? Will the trip be canceled and you'll go with something else for low enrollment?
If
Low
we hit
regist-
20...
If you only get 20 students to register and put in their deposit, what are you guys going to do?
I'm going to assume that means we would want to change venue for our class trip.
Okay. Will you bring all the seniors back together and say,
Yeah.
hey,
Yes.
we said 25, we didn't really hit 25.
If we didn't hit
What's our
that,
plan
we'd definitely
B?
follow up with the seniors immediately and start talking to them.
Okay.
And when do you have to have it to the tour company?
Couldn't hear you there. Oh, was that another question for us?
You couldn't hear your question.
Oh, when do you have to have confirmation to the tour company?
Ah,
When do you have to let them know that you're a go or not?
But we also want to try and give the students as much time as possible for the
Right?
pay money. Yeah, stuff like that, yeah.
This says,
sorry.
oh, sorry, this says $125 per person, along with a signed copy of the contract, is due 10 days after airline seats are confirmed, which in a way, to me, says if they confirm airline seats, then you're going. So
You're on the hook for the
I think
75.
you need to have things a little bit more solid with your numbers before things are signed.
Understandable.
So do we want them to come back with their advisor?
With numbers?
We have a recommendation from the principal and from the superintendent, or at least a green light to move forward. Does the board want to entertain some kind of a motion to move forward with it based on the minimum of 25? I mean, I don't know, you know.
I move to approve the out-of-state field trip that's been presented tonight, and expect that those fine details will be cleared up before the necessary
Any
dates.
contract
Before
is signed.
contract is signed. I'll second.
You have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I'll just say that this is a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't seen a senior trip like this for, I don't know if I ever have. Did you ever go to Florida?
Yeah, they went to.
2005, went to
Yeah.
Florida?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Wow.
it's been a while. Huh. Any further discussion?
I'm really excited for all of you.
So do we have the wording for the motion?
If I may comment in the discussion, I just wanted to thank you. This is going to mean a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
And we do intend to.
Let us vote first.
Well played, well played.
You all set on the motion, Kelly?
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor?
Bye.
Aye. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Fun. I can't wait for bingo.
Bye, Brian.
Good night.
Thank
you. Good work.
Yeah, I would, yeah.
Brian,
And
may
I
I
don't know
keep
if-
this to include in the board packet?
Yes.
Thank you.
Give that back.
Another one?
It's too, I don't know. Well,
Actually, I have a spare copy at home, so that's real convenient.
Well, I will redact that and it goes in
Okay.
my
Okay.
minutes, my
Yes. Interesting. I'll need a writing utensil.
Okay, approval of minutes, to get minutes from September 18th, public session, 2017. There's a motion,
Move to approve?
moved by Mrs. Cardinal, second by Mrs. Moran. Any discussion on these?
I had one, just when motions are amended, it should say in the approval, approved as amended in the minutes.
Isn't it, did we put the acronym for
NEMS?
NELMS right? It's NELMS, correct? Yeah, so we just want to switch that. It's New England League of Middle Schools, I believe, correct?
Yes.
Is it still? Okay. I'm getting old, so it could have changed. So if we can just change that. Well, there's one on page 5. I don't know, I think it was referenced, that was referenced somewhere. Sorry.
On page 10, at the bottom of the page, it reads special teachers, and special in quotes. I think a better description of what was discussed is unified arts specialists.
or unified arts teachers.
Just don't want to be confused with special education teachers. That wasn't the topic. And then also on page 11, in the second paragraph, when I brought up the National PTA program, it's called Reflections.
Anything else? Hearing none, a call for a vote. All those in favor as amended? Aye. Minutes of September 18th, non-public session 1.
Move to approve?
Move to approve by Mrs. Cardinal, second by Ms. McElhaney. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Non-public session 2 from September 18th.
So
So moved by Mrs. Moran,
Second?
second by Mrs. Cardinal. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Just on the second line, I think it would be clearer, instead of not their employees, it would be much clearer to state not employees of the school district.
Anything else? All those in favor as amended?
Aye.
Aye. Non-public session 3 from September 18th.
Move to approve.
So moved by Mrs. Cardinal, second by Mrs. Moran. Discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Non-public session 4 from September 18th.
Move to table discussion of these at non-public session.
Motion to table these to discuss during non-public, second by Ms. McElhenney. All those in favor? Aye. Non-public session 5 from September 18th.
Move to approve.
Motion by Mrs. Cardinal to approve, second by Ms. McElhenney. Discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Minutes from October 2nd, public session.
So moved.
So moved by Mrs. Moran,
Second.
second by Mrs. Cardinal. Discussion?
As soon as I find them, when we opened the meeting, whatever is written on that I said, I actually went back and looked at it. I just opened the meeting. There was nothing really said. I didn't say I was vice chair and running the meeting, so.
No, I know, I just, because Joel wasn't there,
All
I
right.
just thought that I should put why you were running the meeting.
Well, you could say
Okay.
vice chair more and open the meeting,
Okay. that's
please.
fine.
Thank you.
Yeah. On page 2, during the curriculum report, the third section from the bottom, where Mrs. LaFave was talking about real time, it reads as if real time is a computer program. And that's not the case, right? There is a scheduling application that's used during real time, but real time itself is to describe, what does real stand for?
Oh, gosh.
R-E-A-L. Anybody know what the answer is?
Brian knows.
Say real enrichment through authentic learning, if I recall correctly.
Thank you so much, Brian.
Say that again? Say that again?
Real enrichment through
Enrichment.
authentic learning.
Which makes sense because the application is enrichment, right?
To my knowledge.
Something like that? Okay. Application learning.
And maybe note that in the minutes so that when we go and look at that
Mm-hmm.
acronym,
Yes.
we'll know it.
That's not an
There will
intuitive
be a
one. Thank you,
quiz.
Brian. Yeah, so if the wording could just be cleared up a little bit, I trust. Thank you.
Anything else?
On page 5, it says Mrs. Moran said she asked the DOE. That was actually Miss Barabel that asked the DOE for clarification on returning the money.
Yeah, you're not calling the DOE.
I'm not calling the DOE, it's not me. It's
Come on.
so far from my pay grade. And I thank you, Miss Barabel, for giving that.
Anything else? Okay, call for a vote. All those in favor as amended?
Aye.
Abstain? The two of us abstained because we weren't here. Non-public session 1 from October 2nd. So moved by Mrs. Moran,
Second.
second by Mrs. Cardinal. Discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain, both of us. Non-public session 2 from October 2nd.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve
I
by
actually
Mrs.
didn't find
Cardinal.
it in mine, so I will.
Wait a minute.
If
can
I
find
have
them.
two,
We have one.
Oh, you know what, I
for
just,
October 2nd, if we got two voting? And two abstaining?
I think
it's still.
it still passes.
It still passes,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, I do have them, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Motion to, well, did you already make a motion?
Not public.
Yeah,
two.
you second.
All right.
Okay, so second by Mrs. Moran. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain? All right, that's it for minutes. To non-public. Let's get into administrative reports, principal reports. Who's up?
You had all this time to fight over it. I mean, debate and negotiate.
Hello. We've been busy at Henry Wilson. We have a lot going on. We've had another work session with Dr. LeBrun and PBIS. He's actually come up 2 more times since I last presented to the board. And the Unified Arts team worked with him last Wednesday, and they have some tasks to complete that they are doing an amazing job of doing so. We also have Student Council National and Junior Honor Society, which Laurel talked about. They're doing some various fundraisers and community service projects, because that's part of National Junior Honor Society. So you'll be hearing a little bit more about that as the season goes on. We have Miss Cardinal and a community member, Jen Berry, taking over our N68 Hours program. Still involved so that we have a contact here at the school, so that we can drop bags off directly at kids' houses if need be. And they have done an amazing job of doing that, and I am very thankful. We also have, just going through my own little notes over here. We've also started the Student Council started popcorn sales finally with their new popcorn machine that I talked about last time, and also they have their school store open that they do once a week. We had Haven come into 6th grade. Miss Ellis set that up for our students. They are a good resource for our kids. We also have, we had Andrea Reed, our consultant, come in and work on our UBD stuff, and she did some modeling for teachers for some critical peer feedback, and so she was their guinea pig, and when she comes back next month, they get to kind of nitpick her apart a little bit, so that will be kind of fun for them, because she's made them work pretty hard, so I'm sure they're excited about maybe pushing back a little. And so we did have 2 teachers that invited her into their rooms. We had Sarah Manter and Heidi Gillis, because Andrea is a past English language arts teacher. So we also have marker recycling going on this year, and Miss Begonia's 5th grade class is spearheading that. Our secretaries in the office continue to be amazing. They have done a lot this year to sort of get everybody going and things like that. It's been excellent, and that's about it for right now. Got a lot going on.
Any questions from Ms. Richardson?
Forgive me, what is Haven?
So it's a resource for through community partners, and they come in and talk to kids about sort of different kinds of assaults and just sort of inform them on safe choices and good behavior and things to stay away from as they continue to grow. They also come in and do something in our 8th grade and 7th grade too, later in the year.
Okay, great, thank you. Never heard that before.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
I do with the next choice. I provided you an update, complete with a couple pictures that were representative of student work or student activities. I would look at October as really kind of the opportunity that Farmington high school students have the chance to move out of the building and see some of their perspectives of more of a global side, even though it's only still in New Hampshire, although we might get to Florida, it looks like. A couple other things we also did that I think were important, but it's one of the events that we need to work on. We had about 30 people show up and set up a nice presentation for college and career. That included recruiters, it included military people, it included a few other people representative of careers. Unfortunately, we didn't have as big of a turnout as we would like to, and so we've already started brainstorming some other ways to have more of a receptive audience to that type of an event, so that students and parents can start thinking further ahead about college and career choices and what's out there for decisions to be made way ahead of time than trying to make it. The other part of my letter to you talked a little bit about, we've started the process of developing a profile of the Farmington High School graduate. We had our first brainstorming round which was the faculty dividing up to, I think it was 5 or 6 groups and brainstorming ideas of what they consider to be a hallmark of the high school graduate. And those things were quite extensive. They included things like civic responsibility, being able to think critically, solve problems, reading and writing for self-learning, having some global interests, ability to communicate. And so we'll be synthesizing a lot of those ideas down into a more complete package. And we would have kind of a very rough draft that's refined into what that profile looks like. We'll share it out for we have more feedback from students and parents, other educators within the district, and you yourselves too. And so that by the end of the year, we would hope to have a very well-defined profile of what the graduate from Farmington School District looks like. I've also included in the letter a shift in terms of addressing our tardies. I know during interviews that seemed to be a concern for some board members, the numbers of students that are tardy to school. I verified that myself through some of the weeks here, that upwards of 10%, 25 students in one day would be tardy inside the front door of the building on any given day. My opinion, that's too high. So we've been able to reallocate our resources for after-school detention that'll occur every day. And we have a process where the school administrators will look at unexcused student tardies and what we can do either to resolve the issues that students may be facing that get in the way of being here on time and make a plan with them. And if we find sometimes that consequences are necessary, that's also as part of that plan. We'll be starting this on first day of the second quarter, which I believe is November 6th. And so we'll be rolling those out, letting students know, letting parents know what that looks like. But I think we've got a fairly good draft of what the process will look like to address the tardy issue to school. So thank you.
I just, on a side note, I want to say I saw the students from Farmington High School at Ocean Discovery Day, and they represented our school very nicely.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. Anything,
Oh, I do have a question.
Not that fast, huh?
Thank you. It's something that stuck out to me in your report is, it looks like on the tardy expectations, your progression or escalation, if you will, on severity, it looks like it's four times a tardy is treated the same, and then it escalates. Can you speak to us?
On the fourth tardy, well, they've had a history of giving the first 3 as warnings.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to necessarily rock
so
that
that's
boat.
Okay.
So I was trying to stick with what's been kind of a practice already for, not to completely upset everybody. But it actually put us in a position where we're able to really talk to kids and find out what the issues are. And sometimes it's just, well, I just didn't make it in time. And other times I do know in my experience with some students here, they do have some extenuating circumstances. I think if we develop some plans that give them a different incentive and a reason to come to school, we'll see a little bit more success. So that's a hope at this point.
Thank you.
anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's an ambush. I like it. It's totally young ones in trouble.
Hello. We have had a busy month since the last principal's report. We did our first celebration with our bucket fillers, and the kids had a great time. We have picked our student lighthouse team, which will be running the next upcoming this next upcoming celebration, excuse me. And there are 20 students that were picked. They went through an interview process and an application process and met with teachers who are running the lighthouse team to apply for that position. So they're all really excited about doing that. We do have a couple of things that are coming through our building right now. We have the dental education program through Frisbee Memorial Hospital. They come and provide free dental education classes and dental cleanings to the kids. They do 4 lessons, and then they come back and do a cleaning for anybody who signs up for it. We've already had our first session of that, and then we have 3 more sessions coming. And the kids, they seem to enjoy it. They show me their toothbrushes if they run out of the building and talk about it.
This is just for first grade through third grade. They don't do kindergarten. This past week, we got to visit the safety building for Fire Prevention Week, and the kids all went down and got to have a presentation and then see the fire trucks, use the fire hose, go through all that stuff. They had a great time. We wanted to thank Captain Riley Stanchina, who arranged all of that for us. He suggested that we come down and see the new building. He's like, we have enough room, so we sent everybody down. Bonnie arranged a bus schedule with us, and we were able to get everybody pre-K through third grade down there for a visit. So it was, the kids loved it. They came back with all their little red hats on, and they absolutely adored going down there. The preschool went on their first field trip. They went to Butternut Farm and then picked apples. So it was fun. It was a very short field trip for 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, but they did have fun. Second grade is taking advantage of some other free opportunities that we've had offered to us. Holy Rosary Credit Union is doing the junior achievement lessons, and this is all around the community and banking. So those lessons will be coming in to the classes. I think they start either this week or next week. I don't have the schedule, but they do start this week or next week. And they also are working with the UNH Nutrition Connections for picking a better snack, and they come in and talk about picking better snacks, and they try to get them to try different snacks. I think they're trying pears on Wednesday, and working on getting them to just try some different things. So that was another opportunity we had offered to us. We also had Goodwin Community Health and the Stratford County Public Health Network provide free flu shots for the students this year. We had almost 60 students sign up, and they were very impressed. They were like, that's great for your first year. We only had a couple that chose not to have the shot. And then but they were great with the kids. Some of them were a little nervous. They let them watch. They talked them through it. So they did a great job. That we only had 2 kids out of the 60 that were like, I don't want to do this. But they were great. Progress reports went home the 20th. I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but we have added Valley View to the end 68 hours of hunger. Did I mention it last time? I don't believe I did. So we have about 10 people right about now. So that was added at Valley View, and we're working on collecting for that and doing that. I did have one thing that I did not put on your board report, and someone brought it up to me because I thought I brought it up at the last board report. Our preschool team from last year was recently recognized through the Parent Information Center in cooperation with the DOE for their parent involvement activities. They were given an award for doing monthly parent engagement activities where they have the parents come in and they either have presenters or they have the kids talk about the theme they've had that month. So one month they had somebody come in and talk about nutrition and sending in healthy snacks for their preschoolers. Another month they talked about their ocean animals. So the entire team was recognized for that at the beginning of the month. So we were really proud of them. They've done a great job of getting parents in. They have almost 100% attendance for parents coming into their events, so it's been great. And I want to mention all of them. So I have Bianca Pietro, Ashley Davis, Debbie Grubb, Cheryl Perkins, Ann Titus, and Kim Poulin were all part of that preschool team last year that had set up those great events for those kids. Just checking my notes. We do have the Tiger program coming on the 25th on Wednesday, and they're talking about making friends. And I think that was everything. Did you have any questions?
Any questions?
Who are the staff members that are mentoring the Student Lighthouse team?
I could give you a couple of them, but I couldn't give you them all
For
because
next
I have
report.
some new people, and so I wouldn't want to leave anyone off. I will double check the list for you and get it to you. But
Yeah,
I don't want to mention like 2 and not tell you the rest of
Yeah,
them.
maybe for next report.
That'd be nice. But I will get it to you so I can tell you who they are. I think there's 5 or 6 staff members that are doing it now. We did last year, it was like 2 or 3, and they've
Yeah.
gone up to about 5 or 6 staff members, so, yeah. And I know the Unified Arts team helped with the interview process and talking with the kids and doing all of that, so they really stepped up and helped out with that, so it's been great.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thanks.
Could I make just a general request for all the principals' reports? Could we see attendance trends? Is that something we have to report to the DOE anyway?
It is part of the year-end reports.
Year-end.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not
It's not a
something month to
quarterly.
month or quarterly? Think about it, please.
But, I mean, that's certainly.
What would the purpose of just,
To see if it's declining rapidly or improving rapidly, and any trend. Just maybe a 3-month rolling for both students and staff, I think would be very powerful. information to
Staff,
see.
staff is probably going to need to come from the SAU.
Okay. Well, if it's something that's extremely difficult to do, maybe it's just something in the back of our minds that when we're setting up our systems, it'd be great if it was a robust thing, piece of data to have. But I think it's important to know ahead of, because when you go to the DOE website to look at the data that's collected by school district, it's very old.
It's at
Really,
least
I
2
mean,
years, it's at
for our
least 2 years
purposes.
behind.
So, knowing if the students aren't showing up to learn, the rest that we're doing kind of doesn't make an impact.
Or if the staff's not here to deliver it.
So what would the staff, you mean just like a percentage report for staff attendance?
Yeah. Whatever is reported to the DOE.
Actually, staff attendance is not reported to the DOE. And I guess my question would be because we have, staff maybe not physically here, but they may be out for professional development, or they may be out because they're sick, or they may be out for other reasons. So, are you looking for?
So maybe a substitute report would be?
Let me think more about that, and
Okay.
I'll bring it to next meeting. Good question.
Okay. Brian, you ready to give yours?
Yep. All right, first off, can I be heard well from this distance?
Yes.
Okay, nice. Sorry, it's been a little while, so I figured I'd ask. I have two sections, events and student opinion, now that I've gotten that added. Starting with events, tomorrow evening, Tuesday, October 26th, there will be a financial aid night at Farmington High School for families to attend. This event is held with the purpose of explaining the process of gaining federal aid for college, as well as aid from scholarships and even further aid. This presentation begins at 6:30 p.m. Further, the National Honor Society is sponsoring a Red Cross blood drive on Friday, November 3rd, 2017, and this will occur in the Farmington High School gym from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. As far as student opinions go, recently a Google survey via Google Forms was sent by myself to advisors, wow, pardon my speaking, advisors, asking these students for their opinions. While the process of collecting responses is still largely ongoing, and I will admit so far I have a small sample size, some opinions are beginning to appear. It should be noted again that the following opinions are being drawn from a very small sample size that will need to be confirmed or denied through more data as it gets collected. First, there seems to be a split in opinion over the implementation of real-time at Farmington High School. Some individuals are neutral on it, others do find it useful. It seems like a large portion of students overall seem to be against real-time, and the rationale and logic behind this opinion tends to vary. There are some reservations over the number of credits students are able to earn per year, considering one class period is being dropped for real time, which to my knowledge is only a quarter credit, and some other students have expressed reservations over what happens when they do not have work to do during real time, and that means that they're essentially spending this time that could be spent on, say, another class in school that would allow them some more credits. Beyond the survey, there are also instances of confusion, or were some occasional instances of confusion, where students had mistakenly reported to the wrong room and been told, wait, no, you're scheduled here, and they're like, oh, I would report to this other room. But that has only happened a few times to my knowledge. The student opinion does not consist solely of criticism, however. The students have noted how well the teacher and student interaction tends to be, how friendly that tends to be, how willing the teachers are to really help students out who need it. Obviously, his picture and these trends are going to need to be verified and obviously put forward more definitively, and further collection of data will do that. The survey I have put out on Google Drive and have shared with teachers so that they can share with students. I actually, in addition to some responses on Google Drive, I got printed copies of I have some collected paper copies of the survey, and in the back of this I have 10 copies of the survey. I actually shared one for each individual here if they would like to look at the survey I decided to print to pass out, if I may. And I'm open to like feedback if you want any more questions added. I know I need to like. Okay, certainly, that's probably more practical. And I have some examples of some of the answers I've received on the written responses. My report. Oh, right, the spare one was for someone. My bad. And I do have some examples if anyone wants to take a look. I'm going to pass out this one. It's interesting that attendance was noted. I remember seeing on the response pages of my admittedly small sample size, one response that did note that one of the students believed that there were a lot of tardies in school and felt that there should be some enforcement of like attendance. And I also got one comment, we're going to probably end up adding a question on the music program, because I remember seeing that response, and all of them were anonymous, so I don't know any names. But one of the responses also noted, like, for example, the music program, which is currently, Farmington is struggling in that regard. Students in band are actually literally playing on trash cans. Was something that one of the students was.
Should we come in for that individual to understand? I don't know.
Well, the trash cans piece, if I may speak to it.
This is not me like trying to.
No,
like,
not taking it that way, but having tossed it out, I want to make sure that there's some explanation for the general public. One of the things that we had looked at in trying to give an opportunity for students to continue to at least express themselves musically while we're trying to get some other pieces in place. Based on the idea of recycled percussion, we have a group of students who is looking to put forth a percussion group. It's not that the only instruments we have available are trash cans, although Cameron's was gracious enough to donate some trash cans for our purposes, so that we could allow them to try to create their own group from this. They've named themselves Ambush Percussion, and an ambush is a group of tigers, for those of you who don't know where ambush comes from. And so their debut performance was at the pep rally for homecoming, and so it's not just that we've regressed to beating on trash cans because we've nothing else to do. It was a deliberate attempt to give another venue for musical expression. So, but it's good to have that clarified.
Yeah, that was nice.
Any questions for Brian?
Should mention also one of the questions I included was at the far end whether or not students, if the dates were announced, would be interested in attending some of the meetings. Admittedly, many of them were no. Some said like they weren't certain, or they were thinking yes, depending on the dates. I wanted to throw that out there. If I end up getting more either yeses or like yes, depending on the date, I will definitely report that. I also remember one of the students even mentioning they watch some of the meetings as well. So it's nice to know the students are trying to get involved where they can.
And if they start to express an interest, Brian, you can let them know too that the agendas are posted right on the front door of the high school, so.
And on the school website, on the district website.
So they kind of have to see it when they come in.
Yeah,
Thank you, Brian.
Brian, my one question, you mentioned that you have a small sample size. Can you give me a range of your, I'm not asking you for a specific number because.
I made the count, actually.
Okay.
Total of 19, which is very, very small in comparison to how many students are actually in Farmington High School.
But it gives us an idea of what it is currently.
So, a lot of this is preliminary, and I'll be, even by perhaps next meeting, I'll be able to have a lot more students. Some responses were immediate. I talked with some other teachers. I failed to specify whether I wanted them printed or submitted online, which was my bad.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think you're doing a fantastic job as our student representative, Brian. Thank you very much. Thank you for doing your diligence.
Mr. Neto.
Thank you. I'm going to pick up my narrative. I'm going to borrow your microphone.
Go right ahead.
I'm going to pick it up with paragraph 2, since we're talking about attendance. During the month of October, 2 reports were made to DCYF regarding issues of truancy, so those calls were screened in. and assigned to caseworkers. So to clarify or explain a little bit about how truancy works, depends on the age of the student. If the student is under 14 years of age, DCYF will usually screen it in as educational neglect. In that case, they're not looking at the child as the one being responsible for being truant, they're looking at the parent for the one being responsible for the child being truant. Typically, they won't screen a call like that in unless the child has missed 25% of the school days that the child could attend. So clearly, you're seeing, you can't really report those until you've been in school for quite a while. So that's our younger population of students. That can happen even if a neighbor or someone else reports to DCYF that they're concerned that there are children, at home and not attending school. So just to give a little bit of background to that. Truancy cutoff is 10 half-days, and letters do go out. Once we see that students have gotten to a point where they have met the 10 half-days, I can call it into DCYF, or our guidance counselors will call it in with all of our documentation that goes along with it, which they were required to fax. But DCYF can decide that they're not going to screen it in, that they want us to kind of continue to work with the family. We are required at the time that we make a call to DCYF and say we're reporting truancy to have sent letters, to have made phone calls, to have had a meeting, and typically I have to have run by the house and attempted to make contact with the family, either leaving a letter at the door or actually having some kind of communicative contact that I'll document as well. So that's kind of the process, just so people here and people out watching have a sense of how that works. We do have a truancy that will be filed with the courts this week. When that happens, the student is required to attend court, and the parent comes as well. At that time, they'll be assigned someone to either represent them in court if that they choose to have a trial, because they do have an opportunity to have a trial, at which case I have to prosecute that. Or they can simply decide they're going to settle and admit and say, yes, I'm pleading true, I've been out this many times. Usually, and that's also part of it, DCYF also requires for us to submit whether they're excused or unexcused days that the student is out. That becomes kind of tricky if you have a parent that continually will call in and say that a child is sick. So we try to be very diligent about making sure that the parents are bringing in notes from a doctor if the child has been out consecutively, especially if 3 days in a row, a few days in a row. Usually by then we're making some calls and running by the house to try to kind of find out what's the nature of what's going on. So that kind of gives you a sense of the process, just so you have that in your wheelhouse. Right now, our numbers have gone down. There's a total of 14 children involved with area courts. We had a family of children that were adopted recently, so that's always a really great thing to have happen. So only 5 families are involved with issues regarding neglect. And one student is on its shins right now. To go back to the first paragraph, this is our student assistance program, which we're really excited about. Linda Sheff, Sarah Gould, and I have been meeting regularly this month to look at the deliverables that are required as part of the grant, finding evidence-based curriculum to work in terms of educating students about drug and alcohol prevention, keeping them from making those choices from the beginning, talking about the youth risk behavior survey, which we do have to do again. We spent a good deal of time talking with other districts who've gotten this grant to talk about how they implemented it, and we've begun what we've set out is work we're going to do through the course of November in terms of having meetings with faculty, presenting at faculty meetings to kind of let everybody be aware of what's coming up, and then also introducing the students as well. It's grades 7 through 12. So having an opportunity to meet with the students in those grades to kind of let them know about the services that will be coming forward. October 18th, related service personnel and a group of paras went through training regarding online system for Medicaid to make sure that those submissions are going in and are being approved on a timely basis. Paraeducators on November 8th are going to participate in the crisis prevention intervention training, which is the de-escalation piece that we try to get everybody through. Guidance counselors also went through training on the 19th regarding 504 implementation, writing accommodations, best practices in regards to that, which is part of the American with Disabilities Act. I visited area schools this past month to discuss behavior services that they've developed, also autism services that they have in place to kind of see what people are doing, what are some of the practices people are trying to employ to to meet students with those populations. And we're really thrilled to announce that Community Partners met with staff in October, and we've added 1 day a week at Valley View for Community Partners counselor. We've also increased a day at Henry Wilson and at Farmington High School. This is someone who is from Community Partners, comes to the high school and Valley View and Henry Wilson. They hold a small caseload. They're referred by our staff. This is kind of a fast track for getting students involved with Community Partners, because all they need to do is one meeting, an intake meeting at the local Community Partners location, and then they can be met at the school, which is really wonderful because it provides an opportunity to get counseling, and then kind of they're known about their medication needs, and the families can be connected that way in terms of counseling. So we're really thrilled to have that in place, and we're hoping it's going to continue to be a really good program.
And that additional time is funded currently through the Title VI grant. So, which I just found out our next allocation is going to be cut, but we'll talk about that later.
Worry about that when the time comes. So any questions you might have? Yes,
I just have a question. The student assistance grant, is that a one-year grant? What are the plans?
It's a 2-year grant, $100,000 in each fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
How much time are the students in with the counselor when they have a session during the school day?
It's typically in half hour. If there's an emergency that's going on, they'll intervene in an emergency situation. If there's a student who's having a really emotional day, they'll intervene that way as well. Also consult time with other staff members.
Explain that a little bit further, if you would. So the Community Partners counselor, in order for them to see a child at one of the schools, they would have already had to have some type of an intake with the family at Community Partners?
Yes, absolutely. First, and anybody over there can correct me if I'm wrong, we'll get a referral from guidance. That typically this comes as a result of a team meeting. People have gotten together and said the student is demonstrating some concerning behaviors. We really think it'd be a beneficial relationship for them to be involved with Community Partners. That referral will go forward. Parent has to be contacted to see if they're interested. And we've had some that aren't. If they say no, then we say okay. We'll make sure the Community Partners person makes contacts. They have an opportunity to explain the services, have a conversation about it. And then they do have to go to the Dover or Rochester office to do an intake, just kind of where they fill out all their paperwork and their information. And then after that time, once that occurs, and sometimes that's a stumbling block. We really try to make it not be. And then once that has occurred, then they're able to meet the students and the family at the school, or going to the home if that's something that needs to happen.
Just a follow-up question in regards to an emergency situation, as you mentioned. Would that only pertain to the children that are already established, or what would you have? What would happen if there was another student that you think would be a good fit for this? Do you guys have any sort of an emergency protocol?
So we develop a waiting list, and we develop it based on need. I mean, it's prioritizing based on, which students seem to be at the most critical level.
But if there is an emergency situation that happens within the school day, we do have a protocol where parents are contacted. If it's an issue where we feel there is imminent self-harm that's possible here, we will transport to Frisbee and go from there. So, but first contact is to parents, and then we have to assess from there what the situation is.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Bailey.
Good evening.
Hello.
Good to see you.
So this is the first technology report, obviously, since the start of school. So I'll start by saying that the tech department did make a successful move, moving its office from the annex up to Valley View, and in conjunction with getting the SAU up and running in their new location. So that was all a success, which is a huge weight off my shoulders. However, this start of the school year was the busiest one to date. We had all the copiers and printers replaced at the beginning of or before school started. We had some issues with that. We presented some issues that needed resolution with the teachers when they came back. But we got through that, and the start of school, all the typical hurdles that we would normally have with the start of school, creating accounts and all that good stuff. I have started, now that some of the dust has settled, I've started rolling out the 70 new Chromebooks that we have for student use. I should be finishing that up here probably next week. And on a side note, the Chromebooks seem to be a success in the school district. I've heard a lot of good things from students and teachers. Typically in regards to performance and how long a student has to wait before being able to use the device after waiting for it to start up and all that good stuff. So that's a positive, definitely. We did get 4 new smart boards recently installed last week, to be more precise. And Valley View got 2 smart boards. These are the first smart boards that Valley View has received since we started using them. I hope to see more.
And those were grant funded?
Grant funded, yes. So that pretty much covers all of the classrooms at the high school and Henry Wilson. They all have smart boards now, with the exception of some to most of the UA type classrooms.
Most UAs have.
And we've started discussions in regard to what it would look like and how we would get to a one-to-one type environment. So far, we're leaning towards Chromebooks because they're a lot less expensive. But we're just, looking at what it would look like and what it would take to get there. So we've started those discussions.
Questions for Mr. Bailey?
Which 2 rooms at Valley View got the smart boards?
Pre-K, I believe.
And
Yes.
that was through the IDEA grant.
Any questions? Yeah.
What role does your department have when it comes to the school websites?
I'm sorry.
What role does your department have when it comes to the school websites? The information that's on there and...
I used to do most of the main maintenance, if you will, of the SAU site. Ruth Allen has been pretty savvy. There's a lot of administrators this year that are pretty savvy. But the school websites are usually done by the school.
Okay.
The administration usually picks who they would like to work on it.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Are we tabling Fanny again?
Should we table again?
Well,
We tabled
we
it last
tabled it
time
October
because
2nd. We did.
the director wasn't here.
Yep, let's table it again.
Okay. Yeah.
Can we,
Move to table.
By Mrs. Cardinal, second by Ms. McElhenney. All those in favor?
Aye.
We want to table the facilities report.
Yeah.
Motion by Mrs. Moran to table facilities, second by Ms. McElhenney. All those in favor?
Aye.
Table it to the next meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
So that would be November 6th.
Yeah.
Can I make a suggestion that we split this up so that we're not having so many reports at one meeting? We used to, like when there were 4 principals, we had 2 at one meeting and 2 at another with the facilities or technology.
Okay.
It may make meetings more manageable.
Happy to do that.
Because it's starting to make me look bad because the meetings you run are a lot quicker.
Just because you stuff everything in these ones.
Finances.
All right.
Lori?
So you've got 3 financial reports in your drive. We might as well start with the all funds revenue report. And let's see. So you'll notice that the town current appropriation, there's nothing that's actually been populated in that at this point, where all of our documents and everything is gone into DOE, gone into DRA, and we're basically at their mercy as they're trying to juggle and setting tax rates.
Have we gotten any feedback from them on what we sent, or nothing?
Yes, I mean, I have been talking with them and going through, the explanation, verification of, we returned $173,305 back to the town that is going to offset our taxes. So, all of those numbers have, in fact, been vetted. Now I just need to wait for a phone call, or I'll get an email through the portal, or I'll get notifications. So they have everything, and I would really expect that probably in the next 48 hours or so it gets finalized. I think, given the time of the month, the time of the season.
Yeah.
So once we actually go and have our tax rate set, you're going to see that first line populated with the actual figure. I always wait until I have the tax rate set until I go and enter that, so that the Commissioner of Revenue signs off on it as well. So there's not really a lot for me to report in terms of revenue, but that, of course, we have received our first adequacy aid payment. That's on schedule. Our next one will be November 1st. Let's see. I can talk about the top of page 2, which has our transfers. One transfer from Buildings and Grounds will be submitting a request from the trustees of the trust funds to pay us for the cost of the fence that was installed this summer at Valley View. So that's where that revenue source comes from. So probably around the December timeframe, you'll see some revenue received there. I really don't have a lot more to report in terms of revenues, unless there are, specific questions.
The only other thing that I can add to that is I did get word this morning, actually, that or late yesterday, our Title VI allocation, because funds to the state from the federal level have been cut about 15%, we're anticipating that we will be taking a similar cut as funds trickle down. Our allocations are late this year because of the changes in administration and because things are late coming from DC to Concord, so it's later getting to us. We've been given a ballpark of the next couple of weeks to get our final allocation. So that will mean a cut to us probably of about $3,600 to $4,000. Right now, that grant has our additional time for community partners in it. It has DARE in it, and it has our IXL program in it. So,
are we thinking anywhere along the terms of a Plan B in regards to when we do get the final number so that you're not scrambling at the last minute?
Well, right now, the funds are allocated from last year to pay for this year's programs. I've not actually put anything in there because I don't have any allocation to spend yet. So it would be in planning for next year. So we have a little bit of time to do our Plan B scramble. And I've already I fired off an email to principals and Mrs. Danino this weekend to say, okay, if we have this much, what else can we do? Where can we shift things? And
Great.
It's part of our budget discussion.
If you'd like to continue on with the next report, year-to-date report for the general fund. It's just a couple of highlights on this. We are still in the process of encumbering all of the longevity payments In the past, longevity has been distributed over either 22 or 26 pays, so now it's going to be done twice a year in December and June per the teacher's CBA. So I'm going to have to, you'll see longevity entries hitting here probably in January. They've not been encumbered just yet. Let's see, let me think here, whatever else. Other highlights. We do still have a couple of just adjustments to make under function 2400. There shows a couple of negative variances on line 486 and 487, as well as the corresponding benefits. But we've identified those, and it's just very, very simple entries that just need to be done through payroll, and it's not going to adversely affect the dollars of the budget. I'm trying to think whatever else I could, unless I'll entertain questions or items that you see that you would like to ask.
And maybe it's already been answered, line 105, if special ed at Valley View, I think.
Let's see. 105. Okay, that's also another one, yes, that we're also identifying.
Identifying it
as to what that a variance is. Most all of them I have done, but this one has to be charged out. Actually, it belongs in the preschool. Let me see here, I believe, preschool.
So it's shifting the salaries lines to
Yeah.
the correct
So-
line it's been charged against the
So, but if it's shifting it, then I should see it over in another line somewhere else. And
Yeah, right.
I didn't see it in another line.
And this is why I still need to drill down on that one. Line 112 has, let's see, we have a reported period, and then we have an encumbrance of 67, so we have 79. That needs to be double-checked in terms of the two positions that are in the preschool, as well as some movement of staff at Valley View. So I'm still examining those entries.
Because what's budgeted is based on the staff that existed last year.
Mhm.
And as we've had staff shift, we're still, we're still trying to correct the former budget as we now have most of our staff in place while we're building the new budget. So we're.
Right. So most all of them have been addressed, except for just, I think there'd be
So
3 of them.
150 was the other one, line 150. which was,
150.
retirement.
Got the retirement. That would be the corresponding benefit to that
Right.
as well. So I really need to drill down into that, because that is a high variance.
Can you just make sure that we have that answer for next?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Because I'll have to do the research. I have a list of so for example, on line 199, the vocational tuition, we just received our first bill, and the process is about going through the verification of the number of students. We double-check that carefully. So what will happen is, in a month or so, you'll see an entry there for an expense, and then we will be encumbering what's expected to be the remaining amount due for the second half of the year. Let's see. Other questions that you
I
see?
just have a question regarding line 684. It's regarding the utilities. There's such a variance in the amount remaining. It's for electricity, for, let's see, for Henry Wilson versus the other buildings. And I just was wondering why there's such a variance.
There's still another piece that needs to be encumbered. It hasn't been done yet. So what we're using is a third-party supplier, which is Constellation Energy.
Yes.
And so that energy supplier has not been encumbered yet. So then the first part of it is Eversource, who provides, provides the power utility lines.
Yes.
And distributes it, but the source of the electricity, kilowatts, is from Constellation. So that's an encumbrance that still needs to be addressed.
And that's only with one building?
We have Constellation actually throughout the district for all of our school buildings. That one just has not been entered just yet.
Okay.
Any other questions?
But I will provide you those answers for those other variances, definitely. Next one. So the last report that I have is on the federal funds. And the practice really of the federal funds is as soon as we do, receive allocations and approvals for activities, that's when the actual budget is recorded, and then the encumbrance actually takes place. So it's sort of as a expend as you go, I guess, example. So everything goes on a pre-approval. So this is not the entire picture of all of our federal funds. This is just a snapshot where we are from this year.
Yeah, for instance, we have received our robotics grant, which was wonderful news. So we submitted budget as part of our grant application process. Those monies show up in our grants portal, but then we have to turn around and rebuild the budget in the portal line by line so that we can then begin to draw down on it. So we've been told, yes, you have monies, yes, they've appeared there, now we have to go back and rebuild the budget that we've already submitted so that we can spend it. Because that's how the process works.
Is that in case you actually don't get the grant?
Well, we wouldn't have any way to spend it down to put in our allocation or our request without it being in the portal. But it's kind of one of those, as only the government can do. We submit a budget, but then we have to resubmit a budget. And I guess, in a way, it gives us an opportunity, if there's been a shift, to tweak that as we go. But there's still a finite number of dollars that are allocated, and then we have to put within there how we're going to spend it. And then, once it's spent, we have to then go back and report, this is how it was spent, and then we're reimbursed for it. Okay.
The robotics account, what section will it fall under?
I don't think that's been built in
It's
here
not been built yet,
Yeah.
because it's still in process of the lines being created in the DOE portal. And it's 3 separate grants. It's a
Right.
separate grant
So
for
one
each
for each
building.
school.
So one's an itty-bitty grant, one's a medium-sized grant, one's a slightly bigger grant.
So the grants that are listed on here, if I'm understanding right, are ones that we actually have been approved for?
Yes. And funds received.
And funds
some
received,
funds
yes.
Okay. And these
Because
are
we've been
the-
approved for a while. So until that shows, then there won't be any expending of those grants.
We can't expend until it's built, correct? And then you won't see anything here until there's an expense against it.
Any other questions? Okay. New business, athletic handbook, first read.
And I had expected Mrs. Peabody this evening, but there is an athletic handbook in your packet as a first read, looking to potentially have approvals of this at our next board meeting, if that's possible. It is somewhat lengthy, so it wasn't something we were anticipating a final decision on tonight. There have been some updates to the handbook, and I will let Mrs. Peabody speak more specifically to those,
So highlight
I'll have
those.
her there for, or here for.
A
this
motion to accept as a first read.
Second.
That may be my fault. Her and I had a unrelated conversation today, and she asked if I thought the board had digested this enough to ask questions tonight, and I said, probably not on a first read. So I
Okay.
don't know if she was thinking.
And that may be why.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will communicate with her that questions are anticipated for the 6th and bring this back. And at that point, whether it becomes, an acceptance or there's questions to further digest for.
Can we get a copy of what the changes are?
Sure.
Like the
You'd
last
like a
one?
markup?
Yeah.
Okay.
So show us where the changes are, because I didn't read it last year. I mean, I read it when we
Okay.
approved it, but I didn't have anybody in sports last year where I had to.
Right.
It's going to be hard to read, the markups.
Or just
Because-
highlight
Well,
where
at
the
least,
changes are.
Because a lot of the
Or at least-
formatting and outlining were cleaned up.
Or would you at least like to have a copy of the old, I believe the old one is online.
Online.
So that would
It
at
should-
least
it
give
should be
you
on there
a
now.
comparison. If you want the markup copy, I can see if I can
Or
put
even
that.
just a highlight of where the
Okay.
changes.
Well, the old one we're still really operating under.
Right, we are.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, and the markup, if she did it in Word, if I drop it into Google, some of that formatting may remain and some of that may get decidedly
Okay.
funky, but I'll try it. Okay.
You want to vote on the first read?
Do I have a motion?
You do in a second.
Oh, I do?
You do.
God, I missed that whole thing. I think because I was thinking, I think I led Cheryl astray. I have a motion and a second for a first read. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thanks. Dugout painting request.
I have been asked to bring to the board, I have a group of students led by our ELO coordinator who are interested in putting a little tiger pride on our somewhat blasé dugouts. Our dugouts are decidedly concrete bunkerish. And they're hoping to be able to spiff those up a bit and looking at school colors, they're still looking to see exactly what the design might look like, and understanding that they are starting to run out of warm painting days, but they're definitely hoping to have something in place by the start of softball, baseball season. And I'm bringing it to you because back in the dark ages when I was here as a teacher and a group advisor, I had made a similar request and was told by the board resoundingly, no, you may not have students paint the dugouts. And I think partly the concern was that somehow it was going to be graffiti. So I said, I'm going to take that to the board because I think we have a group of folks who are looking to see how we can get students involved. And certainly Mr. Gordon would be involved in the paint choices. We're not looking to throw something on there that's incompatible with the finishes and materials. We want to make sure it's something that will last. But I'm certainly in favor of our letting the students put their stamp of some.
Inside or out?
On the outside, on the outside. So that it kind of shows, hey, these are tiger dugouts.
Who's going to approve it, of the design? Who's the design?
I think certainly the design approval could come back to you if you wish. It could go through Dr. Moore and myself if you prefer.
I'm comfortable with that.
I think you have good taste. Move to allow for the project to go on.
I'll second.
I would just throw the athletic director into the mix, too. of
Absolutely.
being involved.
Yeah, and she's been
I'm sure she
in the
is.
conversation.
Okay, motion and a second to move forward with that. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much.
Budget workshop schedule.
Last year, my surgery threw a bit of a monkey wrench into our budget process and discussions. What I would like to do this year, and I don't intend to be repeating the surgery part.
Good.
Done with that, I'm hoping, is to set up a series of workshops to give us an opportunity to discuss in workshop format what the possibilities are, talk through some of the issues around budget before it becomes a presentation and a decision. I'm looking for the workshop format where it is, yes, minutes would be taken, but it is not it's not a venue where decisions will be made, it's where discussions are had, so that I can have my admin team come in and answer some questions, put some things out on the table, get some direction from the board before it becomes a presentation that is out to the general public of the direction that we're heading. Looking at that, we have two Mondays that are in between board meetings. The next would be October 30th, then the one after that would be the 13th. And then also looking to see, depending upon the number of dates you feel we might need to have for completing the budget cycle, as we need to have a vote on the operating budget at the November 20th meeting, so that we can get things to the budget committee per their request by the 21st, if that's the schedule that you're still looking to follow. So at least those intervening Mondays, and then whether or not there are Thursdays that you wanted to put in as tentative dates to also, I don't know that we need every Monday and every Thursday between now and November 20th. However, it's probably going to take more than 2 board meetings. Although I think the workshops will probably help the process.
Are you going to have something prepared by Monday the 30th? Are you ready for some sort of workshop on the 30th?
My intent is to have binders to you the 30th, yes. Or in advance of the 30th. We'll probably be stuffing them like crazy on Friday. So.
I think it's a great idea, actually. I'm looking at it more from a personal perspective, too, just because I'm on a huge learning curve, and it's my first budget season for the school, so I view this as a great moment to be able to ask a lot of questions outside of this venue. So, yeah, I'm in.
So the 30th?
The 30th and the 13th as workshop dates. And then, I don't know if we want to get through at least the first workshop and our first meeting on the 6th to see if there are any Thursday dates that we need to throw in there in addition for, okay, this is taking a little bit longer than we thought, we need to spread things out. I just wanted to give people an opportunity to start holding dates on a calendar as well. And
I know Mr. Frida won't be here on the 30th, but we'll have, the rest of us are okay with it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think he's out of town. And the 13th, too, folks? Mrs. Cadden, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Would it be better to have them down at Henry Wilson versus here, since it's close to your office for any?
Sure, we could do that.
That's a good idea.
And that
Great
also
idea.
gives us the smart board access for,
Yes, that's a great idea.
let's chat about, okay.
So we'll post that this week.
Yep.
So we're looking at workshop October 30th.
What time?
Do you want a placeholder for a workshop November 2nd as well, or is that too quick? Were you saying Thursdays?
Why don't we do through the 6th and then see if Thursdays need to be added?
Well, we
Because the
have
6th would be the first board meeting. And at that point, we would probably be presenting some of the pieces, and then,
You said Stan wasn't going to be available on the 30th?
I can't remember. I know that he's out for a couple weeks because we
well,
had
he was in and out.
Yeah.
So I
I'm
wasn't.
just wondering
I
if we
can't
can
say
meet
for
earlier.
sure.
So if we can meet earlier, if he's not available, we can meet any earlier during the day other than 6:30.
Oh, say meet at 6 or 5:30?
Yeah, I mean, if that works.
Yeah, 5:30 is the earliest, really, for me.
5:30 and bring munchies?
Well,
So just to be clear, all of these
depending on whether
workshops
or not
will be-
our other board member can do that, so.
Any workshops that we have, whether they're Monday or Thursday, will be open to the public. There won't be any decisions made, and it also, we wouldn't arrange for televising these,
Correct.
right? Because we haven't,
Correct.
yeah, we haven't planned for that.
And the workshop won't be interactive with the public?
No, it's not
Any
going to be
public
like a public
participation?
hearing.
It's
No.
not public participation,
No.
it's a workshop. It's
Right.
work time for admin and board.
The materials will be projected, so any folks who do come to view can actually view what we're talking about.
That was, I mean, you'll have, I was thinking more if we needed to be putting other materials up and talking about, okay, what about this, how does that, I wasn't looking at trying to project all the materials.
Okay.
Those budget binders are difficult to project. These don't project well.
Yeah, we don't, okay.
Okay. All right, so we'll shoot for 5:30 then next
Okay.
Monday? Okay.
So November 2nd,
Unless
we're
for
just
some reason
holding.
we hear from Mr. Frieda, I think then we may have to adjust it. I can't recall.
We'll play it by ear.
Yeah.
Okay. And then November 2nd, we're not going to use, we'll see what happens on November 6th as to whether or not we need the successive Thursdays.
Got it.
Okay.
November 2nd. and
Is a no.
6th.
Okay. Second's
Next
a no.
official school board meeting is November 6th.
6th,
Right.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Old business.
Can I just ask
Yeah.
something under new business? It's just a topic I wanted to bring up. The soccer/football field that we have right up next to the high school, what is the official entrance to the field? Do you have to go down that hill in order to get to the bleachers?
No, you could go down the access road and around that way.
Okay, because everyone that I see goes down that hill, and it's been mentioned to me a few times, my daughter's in soccer, so even teams that come from other schools mention, why aren't there steps? Could we perhaps put steps into the side of the hill?
I would love to build bleachers into
Right,
the side of the
and
hill.
that has been a
Anything.
conversation.
It is just very hazardous. I have seen on several occasions, elderly people trying to manage that hill, just other little kids. I just think it's,
There is a tarred walkway that goes down the hill.
and yet it's not, or maybe put signage up to show people where to go. It's just because everyone uses that hill, and it bothers me to no end. And I really would love to see something else put in there, because it's just something that's going to be an issue, I think, otherwise. So if we could look into that, that would be great.
Okay.
NEAS and C discussion.
So in talking with Dr. Moore, in talking with George Edwards from NEAS&C, looking at the date for our site visit and our preparedness for that, we admittedly have a lot of work to do. And there were some pieces that hadn't been presented to me quite the same way as my discussion with Mr. Edwards this time around. So as we had looked at, initially it was going to be full district, everybody at once. And when he and I had spoken, I had not gotten the impression that that was necessarily at a cost savings to the district, other than the fact that there was an attempt to pay for that in another direction that we're not going in. But as I talked to him this time around, he did mention the possibility of treating the district as a K-12 school. so that it would be a single site visit as opposed to 3 groups. So it would essentially be a third of the cost if we chose to do that. However, if we do that, the other 2 schools who are not necessarily at the same point in the process as the high school would need to catch up. Either way, I would like to back up the high school a year to make sure that we have a foundation in place that is going to allow us to have a site review that becomes a constructive piece rather than a list of what isn't yet, because we know we have some things that we still need to have in place. So what I'm putting out to you is letting you know that, one, I'm looking to back things up by a year, at least for the high school. But if we were to have the other buildings join, and that would be another conversation with staff, and because they will need to be on board per NEASC requirements there. If that happens, then it would potentially back it up further. And so I wanted to put that on the table for discussion purposes for you to think about. It doesn't mean that there has to be a decision tonight, but kind of as a think about it, and this can certainly be a first read if need be, and we can revisit, but putting it on the table.
Anybody have initial thoughts?
Well, my initial thought is, what steps have we gotten done in any of the school? I kind of thought that everybody was still working on it, although not officially doing the other 2 buildings. And I don't know, did anybody else have that feeling that we were all working on it, but not necessarily pushing forward with all the other schools?
My understanding was that the high school was at a much more accelerated place where anybody else was, because that's what we've heard a little more about.
Right, but not that nobody else was working on it. I guess
I didn't get the impression that there was a lot of movement at the other 2 buildings. It's just me.
There certainly hasn't been any talk in the language of self-study. Certainly plenty of curriculum work going on. And I think that was the big hurdle that needed to be overcome.
And I think
was documentation
certainly
of the
the
curriculum.
work that's happening in all 3 schools is laying that foundation that would be required for all 3 schools. So in that, I'm not concerned. But I need to make sure that I have a uniform understanding before I plow forward and sign anything that then comes back and someone says, well, wait a minute, how come? So.
Can we handle this as 2 separate requests?
Mm-hmm.
Would that be all
We
right
can.
with everyone?
Well, I guess
So
but
make
what
a
I'm-
motion to push the event 1 year.
Okay. And then,
Is there a motion to have a second? I'll second it for discussion.
and by separating them, I mean, and that's fine, but what it does do is, if we wanted to do all 3 together, we could still do Henry Wilson and Valley View together as a single site visit as well later, if that
And that would still
became.
represent savings.
That was an option that was presented to me, but it does mean that we're looking then at paying 2 separate site visits if that comes to fruition.
All right, so I'd like to amend my motion, and the motion would be to push the first accreditation of any that happened by 1 year, so making it 2020.
Okay.
I just wanted to sound like Barbara Walters.
I'll second that.
2020.
Discussion on
I
that?
guess my concern is that if we push it back now and, come this time next year, and we're still not ready, how many times can we push it out before they say you're just not giving it the best shot?
Well, can I just, I'm going to add, I think that when Ms. Vaughn initially came on board late last summer with us, one of her, and correct me if I'm saying anything incorrect, one of her initial meetings at DOE kind of, we discovered that things weren't set
Right.
to the extent that we thought they were, and all of the things that we were told that was okay to do, and that this was done and this was okay, wasn't necessarily factual. So, that, I think, put us behind the 8 ball initially.
It did. We certainly lost some momentum
Yeah.
with that. My next opportunity to address the staff was at the November 10th workshop day, which was 3 days after my surgery. We did have a discussion. We've not had another full district discussion. There've been a few building level pieces that have been primarily at the high school at this point, because at that point, it was high school moving forward, the rest we're gonna kind of shift, because there was no way we were going to be able to put 3 site visits in one budget cycle. And so we kind of said, okay, we're gonna shift gears. I think it's safe to say that Standard 1 is at least mostly done in most schools, and moving forward from that at the high school. The other thing that I really want to make sure that this process doesn't become is one more thing. We really need to focus on the foundation that needs to happen, and then the self-study is the reporting out of what we're already doing. I don't want this to become a dog and pony show. I don't want this to become the grand checklist that we just go through to say that we did it, because that doesn't create lasting change. And so I think it's important to do, but I want to do it for the right reasons, and I want to make sure that whatever we do is done well. I don't want to do it for the sake of saying, we set a deadline, and by golly, we're just going to meet it to say that we did it. I think that's a very expensive process and will do more damage than it's worth if it's not done thoughtfully.
And I wouldn't even be comfortable seconding Mrs. Cardinal's motion if A, that hadn't happened to us, and B, we have, some key people on board, certainly Ms. Vaughn's experience in this whole realm, Mrs. LaFave's experience, Dr. Moore, people that have done this in other districts, have indicated through their interview process that we might not be where we want to be yet to really be going down that road full steam. There's some work to be done, because that's what we're going to be told anyway. So why not continue to do that work before we get to that point? So I'm comfortable with that year out as well.
My only hesitancy when this was all mentioned was that it would then move it down in regards to priorities, but I'd like to know that if it is being pushed off a year, that there is still a lot of effort being put behind it. It's not being
There's a
tabled.
tremendous amount of effort being put out. And what I want to make sure is that the effort isn't just to check NEAS boxes.
Okay.
It's about building foundation and changing culture.
All right. Then I have no problem with that then.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. We have the wording of can you just reread the motion again, Kelly, if you don't mind?
The amended motion was to push the first accreditation back 1 year to 2020.
Okay.
And is that for K through 12, or are you just doing, are you intending that to be K-12 being the first one, or are you intending?
No, I intended it to be 2 separate kind of situations that we need to discuss. So just, we won't go for any NEASC accreditation in 2019 is really but you can't put a motion in a negative.
Right. Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Facilities use policy. Do you want to?
Well, I was approached by a member of the community, who's also a women's club member, about fees being charged for, was the 500 at Henry Wilson? For their penny sale? And a concern that going into this year that we will be sending out fees. Now, I was under the impression that we hadn't finished our policy on facilities use and adopted one. Now, I did find that we do have one that allows for charging, but Henry Wilson being the community's gym, I guess I have some concerns that charges were made to the 500. Or potential charges to the 500.
And so that conversation took place, my understanding is between Mr. Gordon and Mr. Pelletier. And the discussion was around essentially the timing, because with the overtime, typically the mats would be put down during the Friday night shift for a weekend event. The 500 had something scheduled there in that morning. Mr. Gordon had indicated then we're going to have an overtime charge to have them come in to do on Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening. Did you want to, we're happy to set up on Friday if you wanted to cancel Saturday, or this is what it's going to cost me to bring people in order to be able to set up. And my understanding is that there was an agreement to the charge up front before the paperwork was filed. Having had the conversation with Mr. Shagnon and, via email, I certainly understand, and I'm not looking to just charge people because. Part of the issue that we're beginning to look at is that we've had a number of pieces that are under budgeted or not budgeted, and every time we have an event like that where there's overtime that has to be charged, and people are working it legitimately, we owe them the wages for their labor, and I don't begrudge that, but we're having to absorb that into the budget where there's no budget line to do that. And so moving forward into the coming budget, I guess I would say if that's a practice we want to continue, and I'm fine if that's the case, I would like to be able to budget for that additional overtime so that the understanding is we'll make it open to the community, but that there's a line item to take care of that. I did ask for an initial printout. We have about 56 hours of overtime that has been just for setting up community events since January of 2016. So that's around $1,431 at an average hourly rate for our custodians.
Now, is a community event considered graduation?
No, that's
Okay.
a school event.
So community event is, but they do get overtime for graduation.
They do.
Okay, so
yes.
the 1431 since January, can I ask one question, Lori? And I don't know if you have it or Lori has it. What did we budget last year for custodial overtime in last year's budget?
I'm thinking that it was.
We expended 6,200.
Am I thinking it was 7,000? Yeah, it was 7,500.
Okay, and we expended 6,200 of that, and so we've rebudgeted 75 this year. Are there the only thing that I can think of is that that there are a Sunday event is what would cause this. Or
It's either a Sunday event or a Saturday afternoon, evening event when there's 500 practice in the gym in the morning.
Right. I just can't think of what all these things are, and I know I'm not up here all the
The
time.
Pine Craft Fair, they would have to come Sunday, but they don't even have to come Sunday and take up the mats. I mean, that can be done
No,
Monday morning.
taking it up can be done Monday morning.
Right.
And typically, as he said, this time is not included for laying down floor covers or gym removal if it's done the night before a function, and it's usually removed early Monday morning following functions. The other thing that's not included here is additional time that traditionally when there is I don't want to say traditionally, when there's an event like this, like the one that happened this past weekend, there is a tremendous additional amount of cleaning that has to be done in the bathrooms and hallways when the custodians come back in, because generally the condition is very poor. And so that also, it doesn't add to overtime, but it's additional time that they have to spend on shift that they're not doing other things because of the additional work that's been created. So again, that's not to say that we can't open this up as a community service, and I have no problem doing that. I just need to have some guidance as far as if I'm going to have overages, can I make sure that those are budgeted for?
Well,
and we had partial budgeted
I was going
here.
to say, if we had 7,000, we only expended 62.
No, we had 7,500. We were $1,300 under budget.
Okay.
And so.
So this puts us at a little over 100 then over budget
No,
with
because
this.
that's on last year's, that's from January 1. That's on last year's budget.
I'm talking about from so part of this is from last year to this year too. Okay. So some of this is last year.
Right, you said from January 1. So
Right.
6 months of that, and I can't imagine there was anything in July or August community-related that we had to do overtime for.
No, because
Right.
the
So
floors are-
6 months of that was pretty much the bulk of that, it sounds like. I mean, I think we have enough budgeted.
Okay.
You know, and I think, I mean, my personal opinion is we have overtime budgeted for things like this. Certainly, I would encourage a conversation with organizations like the 500 where they are not getting charged because of the community service they provide, that, you know, cleaning out some of the locker rooms and the bathrooms and stuff was something that we had always done and been expected to do to help out, so that, you know, the maintenance person who's on duty or whoever it is the next day doesn't have to really put a lot of effort into getting those ready for student use. Students shouldn't have to come back Monday morning to dirty bathrooms and things of that nature. And I think the 500 would be agreeable that that they would, you know, clean up, but or any organization that's using it. I get nervous that we start charging organizations like that who provide a service to us that is very unique and unlike any organization, I think, probably in the state, actually. You know, we don't pay for the 500, the community doesn't. It's all volunteers. The Women's Club, I'd hate to see them get charged, because 2 weeks prior to their event, they're handing out checks to the schools. You know, I mean, they're treating the teachers like kings and queens at a beautiful tea that they do every year.
So as of yet, there's
did we
no
charge?
invoice that has gone
Okay,
out
we
on
haven't
this.
charged.
No.
Mrs. Cardinal.
Just trying to get back to the root of why any of this happens. This changeover that has to happen when there's a Saturday to Sunday or a early Saturday to late Saturday, different events. Is it all based around the mats?
Primarily, the rolling out the mats to get the floors covered.
Okay.
If there's going to be additional foot traffic on the playing surface.
Now, the floors were refinished 2 years ago? Is that right? Does anybody remember?
This
2 years ago.
Resanded.
Resanded, and we were told
They're
by the
finished-
contractors.
They're
who did
finished
that.
yearly.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. So
Yeah.
resanded, the major work that was done.
Right.
Um,
And for Henry Wilson, if I can interject, it's the last time that Henry Wilson can be done.
Only Henry
Before-
Wilson?
Henry Wilson, before we have to replace
We have to
the floor.
replace, right. And the life that, so that's only applies to Henry Wilson, not high school as well?
Correct. 'Cause
Well,
the high
Henry
school-
No, no, no,
Wilson's-
no. What do you mean applies?
That statement that this is the last time this can happen, the sanding of the floors.
Because it's been sanded down so much.
Right, and I'm asking for clarification, is that the case for both the Henry Wilson and the Farmington High School gymnasium floors?
Henry
Okay.
Wilson's floor is older.
All right, so that's what triggered our district to purchase the mats and start using the mats religiously to try to extend the life of these floors, correct?
And the artwork.
Do you remember what the contractor said that the life of the floor would be as a result of either always playing on it without mats and using it without mats, or that drove us our district to purchase the mats and start
And
using them?
that's more of our facilities
They don't
managers.
play on the mats.
No,
The
they don't-
reason why I'm asking this is.
There are no games that happen on the mats.
Sorry, I don't mean,
Okay.
I apologize. You know what I'm talking about here.
Sorry, I didn't.
Okay? You get where I'm going here, right? Okay. I just would really like people to stop nitpicking my words. You know what I'm talking about. Why are we doing this to ourselves? If the floors are going to need to be replaced, let's plan on replacing the floors in a reasonable amount of time. Put it in our capital improvement plan. Am I oversimplifying this? You can tell me if I am.
I think, do the mats also make the poly last longer too? Like the year-long coat? So if we have like tables set up on it for fundraisers and things, it's gonna get scratched and quite honestly look awful if we have tables on it.
For those of you viewing from home, Mrs. Richardson just pointed out that the use of the mats also helps with that poly covering and letting it last longer, so it looks shinier longer.
It also helps to protect the artwork that's at center court.
Yes, oh no, I can see the pros and cons of the mats. I'm just saying it seems like we're getting to the point where the cons of the mats are exceeding the pros at this point. I just would really like us to rethink, are these mats really worth it? Because I'll tell you also, something that is really stuck in my side over the last couple of years is the trip hazard that these mats create. So I would like us to rethink this whole thing. But
Well, regardless of whether or not we're using a mat, we have sanded down the Henry Wilson floor as far as it'll go. So you're right. We need to talk about putting some money away for that floor.
Is there any money in a fund for that floor now, Cory?
I mean, not specifically for the floor, but for other, these other capital,
So is there
capital
a-
reserves.
There's a capital reserve that could be used to replace the
For it,
floor.
yeah.
There are also several other directions that we've talked about
Right.
using those capital reserve funds, which can only be spent once.
when would we be due to look at the CIP again?
Probably part of our workshop.
Let's bring this up. And if we could trouble Mr. Gordon with an assessment of the pros and the cons of these mats.
I may not have that for the 30th, as he's not in this week.
Oh, that's
but-
right. The other thing is, and maybe we have to discuss with the two gentlemen that came to the agreement that, yes, this overtime was necessary, or yes, the mats were necessary and the changeover was necessary, is, did both events have to happen at Henry Wilson? What if one event happened at Henry Wilson and one event happened at the high school? Would we have avoided this whole conundrum?
Probably.
Or even at Valley View? I mean, it
So
was
maybe
Pennsylvania.
that's the circle back, because I really do enjoy the idea of our facilities director making these calls on a daily, on a daily to weekly basis when these situations come up. But maybe it's just as simple as some coaching on, hey, don't forget, we have 2 gyms, or don't forget, there is another option. There's always another option. Whether or not it's cost effective or worth the effort is the question.
Can I ask where we are with that policy, though? I mean,
No changes have been made to it by the policy committee, no.
No?
Mm-mm.
It's on the list.
But I don't even know if we need to have, I don't think we need a motion, but, seeing as that we were $1,300 under this budget last year, we've only spent $567 of it this year so far. I'm just not comfortable with charging the 500 Boys and Girls Club for a facilities use for this event.
I'll second your motion.
I guess I'll make it a motion. And that's a second. Any discussion?
Sorry, repeat the motion?
Well, I really wasn't making a motion.
Verbal agreement to the $150 exchange shouldn't happen?
I didn't even know the amount.
Didn't you
Was
say
the
that?
amount
I
said?
thought you said you didn't want to have them
I
charged.
didn't say,
Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry.
but that's okay. And actually,
Imagine that number.
it was 125.
So you don't want a motion?
Pretty close. At this point, no invoice has been sent. I will take this as direction that no invoice will be sent.
Yeah, I don't think we need to vote.
Yeah, maybe if just Mr. Gordon could be.
Strike that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Professional Development Committee.
This is shorter, I think. Our new chair of our Professional Development Committee brought to my attention that our list of thou shalts for our structure do include a board member, although I have no board member listed as being the representative for that committee. I have all other subcommittees listed, this one isn't.
I have, in the last few years, I've been on that committee.
Okay.
I don't mind serving on it, and I will say the same thing that I used to say to Cynthia. What I found was happening was, I thought I was going to be part of discussions surrounding professional development opportunities, the work on a plan when it came necessary. I went to a couple of meetings, and it ended up being more of who's behind on professional development, who's at risk of, hey, they got to get stuff done, or they're at risk of, not being certified. I didn't think that that was a place for a board member to be. In fact, I sometimes felt like they may be uncomfortable with me being there during that discussion. So I used to say to Cynthia, when the discussion doesn't revolve around that, I'd be more than happy to come.
It will, or my intention would be that it's more directed about opportunities this year than what you had
Right. While we're on this, I have to say, I do not remember being on the the board member on CIP. I thought it was Linda. Wasn't that the committee that you were gonna, I thought you were gonna serve?
Capital improvement, or?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
capital
thought she was
improvement.
capital improvement.
I thought it was Linda. I really
Okay.
did.
I think
Because
so.
when I got that email, I kept saying, wow, I cannot remember this being me.
And maybe I wrote it down, or I don't know if it was, you were willing to be an alternate because you weren't quite
I think she's
comfortable.
alternate
On budget. I think I did put my name in actually for the Professional Development Committee. I have
Did
that
you?
written down
Okay.
as
Okay.
the other one for me. But I don't mind being on the capital improvement. I didn't put my name in for that. I think you did. Is this, no?
I don't remember it at all. I
Well, and they didn't
That's
have
fine.
anyone down either. So,
Okay.
I mean, I'm happy to call Erica and say, we're going to switch that because neither of us made the first meeting anyway. I do have the minutes.
Well, we had negotiations that
Yeah,
night, so.
so, and I'm typically the editor.
Oh. I mean, is it, do you mind that?
Nope. Like I said, just let me know where to be and when.
Okay.
Let's put it that way.
I believe the next meeting is it's either the 6th or the 7th of December, and I will confirm that.
Perfect. And now that's for the CIP?
That's
or for-
CIP.
Okay.
And typically, they're either in Arthur's office or the chambers, depending upon what's available and.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
And in regards to Professional Development Committee?
So is
Am I
that,
on that? Because I,
so that's you?
I mean,
Is that you?
unless you have a desire to really want to do it, I don't mind continuing to do it.
I just remember at one of the first meetings I ever came to, and you guys were discussing the reallocation of the different committees, I had written down alternate as budget and then the Professional Development Committee, so.
Do
I'm
you
open.
want to do that and I'll be your alternate?
Sure.
Okay,
We do that.
okay.
It seems like it's a whole new forum anyway, so I think that it's going to be, I think I'll learn as I go.
Yeah.
It'll be fine.
Okay.
I think it's you and I on buildings and grounds, and I haven't heard
It is.
anything
Yes.
for
Okay.
buildings and
Oh,
grounds.
that's what it was, you were
Yeah.
building and grounds.
Well, we finally got the office moved.
Yeah, okay. Anything under old business, any other?
Can I just ask for Professional Development Committee, when is the next meeting?
It will be November 28th,
November.
so the last Tuesday of the month.
Perfect. Sorry.
She'll
Unless
email
there's a
you.
vacation, then it will push it the Tuesday before the vacation.
Okay, just send me.
But they're scheduled for the year, and I'll add you to the invite.
Perfect, thank you.
Mrs. Richardson, I'm sorry, after you get done giving your report, I did have a question for you. Do you mind if I follow up with you on, I just thought it was the more appropriate time to ask you after your report. I was hoping that you could shed just a little more light on the parent conference thing. I mean, can you talk a little bit about, like, I noticed, is that going to be a format throughout the 4 through 8, that 7th grade format that came up as a concern tonight, or?
Nope, that's just what 7th grade chose to come up with.
Okay.
Which, I mean, in a small amount of time, there are a limited amount of choices of how you can organize that time, and that wasn't the only option that was provided either, so.
Well, yeah, we have the letter. How is, because they're actually the second smallest class, so I'm curious as to.
Their thought was to try to fit as many, to touch base with as many parents as they possibly could on that day, and then allowing for follow-up after if need be with the parents. It's not like it's their only contact with them. That team actually does a really good job of communicating with parents on a regular basis. And so there, between those options, there also is the option to extend a meeting time for another additional time, if that is not enough time, if there are concerns.
Okay.
Further concerns.
All right, thanks.
May I ask a follow-up?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, where this is something brand new they're going to try, I imagine the 7th grade team, they really thought this through, and so are they going to formalize, a feedback on something new like this?
I'm sure. I'm sure they will definitely. They're a very organized team, so.
So you're in support of them trying this, then? Is that a fair statement?
I'll ask one too. Have you had any feedback since this has gone out on the 20th on how parents are embracing or not embracing this format?
Other than what was brought up tonight?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I don't know. Did you have feedback?
I do.
Yeah, well, why don't we go into public participation anyway? You can come up and talk about that.
Can I start with what I wanted to say publicly first?
Sure.
You're still on camera.
I know. Laurel Vashon, 7th grade team member and president of the Farmington Teachers Association. When we received the district-wide calendar in February, we noticed that there was a half a day for conferences and a full day PD the next day. It was brought to our attention that maybe we would consider that Wednesday, because there were only 2 hours, to extend the day to 6 p.m. And when we talked about it as a group, knowing that the next day was a full day PD, we didn't feel like there would be any compensation for that. And our day does technically or contractually end at 3 p.m. So we voted no against extending the conferences, but we asked that maybe the days be switched so that conferences would be on Thursday and the PD would be on the half day. And we were told that that wasn't possible. So then we said, well, we would consider maybe having nighttime conferences next year after the vote for the town went through. So, if we felt like we had support from the town, then we would probably be more apt to extend our day. And it did go through. So next year, we would certainly entertain that. So with only having the 2 hours for conferences, we were told to be creative. The 7th grade team did come up with that. We've had, I want to say, and I'm going to be a little bit off with my numbers, but I want to say the letter was sent home, and then we also set something up online where the parents can come in and sign up for what they want. And I think they've had about 12 sign up for conferences so far. 9 say they're not necessary at this point. 4 or 5 maybe said that they would prefer to have a written progress report. And that's as of like today. So, and like I said, I could be off 1 or 2 in each area, but not everybody wanted that parent-teacher conference within those times. And we've kind of always offered different things like that. So it's not like we were trying.
You did that last year, even with the full day. They offer the same.
Right. So, we're trying to work and make it doable for parents.
Thank you.
You said they had the 2.5-minute survey at conferences last year?
No, because we
Oh,
have a
right.
whole.
Okay.
So, can I ask, what's scheduled for Thursday, November 9th? What's the PD that's scheduled?
Okay, so at Henry Wilson, it's PBIS, and at the high school, it's around.
Transform the schools.
And early release, the students are released at 12:20, 12:15?
12:25, I believe, are the buses.
We won't release until about 12:35.
Yeah.
The last two.
Okay, oh, I see, so the conferences are like 1 to 3, that's the block. In my mind, I couldn't figure out this 2-hour thing, okay, now I do.
By the time we were.
Yep, yep,
Yeah.
okay.
Can I just ask a question? What are the other grades doing? I'm
Yeah, just sit
sorry.
next to
Yeah.
Mrs.
Yeah.
Cardinal.
So I don't think Henry Wilson is probably in the minority in this, of how other people are having to run them, but I've left it open to them. They're scheduling things. Some teachers, I can't tell them they can't stay, so some teachers have chosen to do what they'd like for hours, and everyone's sort of doing something different because it is a small chunk of time of how they're going to use that time appropriately. And 4th and 5th have self-contained, so they have a smaller amount of kids. And then 6th grade, they're a little bit more compartmentalized, so I believe they're doing them by advisors, and 8th grade is doing student-led conferences, and parents can sign up and they'll have it with their advisor. So they won't get to meet with all the teachers that day, they'll just have their student presenting to them. And they're working on that during their one-time-a-week study hall to prepare the kids.
And they are all still, well, there is only that 2-hour time frame on that day, technically. However, it was mentioned that it was brought up that you could switch the days, and yet, was it the union that stated that you couldn't have who was it that said no to?
I'm not comfortable stating that, I don't know.
Oh.
Someone else may answer that, but.
I'm just curious.
As we had looked at our professional development needs, we didn't switch the full day out. And I will admit that in the discussion about, we'll look to see what happens with the vote, and then we'll reconsider. My understanding was if the vote passed, that we might reconsider for this year, and I will own the misunderstanding there.
Can you explain that? You lost me, I'm sorry.
As Mrs. Vashon mentioned, that when the vote was taken with the association, it was if we do get an affirmative vote for our contract and feel like we have the support, we will revisit what we do as far as staying later next year. I read that as next school year, not next calendar submission year. So I will own that.
I feel bad for missing it. I missed that on the calendar review. Did anyone else notice that? I don't remember us discussing that.
I noticed that we were doing half-day for parent conferences,
Yeah.
but I didn't read into what it meant for asking teachers to stay later in a given day.
I think, personally, I'm just a little concerned, that I get that we have for professional development needs, but, man, we went from a 7-hour parent conference schedule to 2.
And the other discussion that we'd had as far as giving teachers the time would be if they stayed later, giving them giving the teachers the half-day release on the other day. And that was not considered acceptable, so.
Do we have another parent conference time? I know, like in March, right? Is it set up the same way, and if it is there a way that we could fix that now?
I will also say that I'll be interested to see the, what we get for parent turnout, because last year we had teachers that had like 4 to 5 hour gaps during the day. So I think with it being during the day, I'm not sure you're going to see much difference in participation, whether it's 2 hours or a 6.5 hour day.
Because what we're talking about here is having parents get into the school during the school day, regardless, here. So in my experience talking with other parents, hasn't been much of a complaint that they have to do a conference over the phone if they can't make it into the school on the school day.
I feel old. I do. It used to be the biggest day of the year. I'm serious.
Well, in middle school, a lot of parents they don't feel the need to come in like they do in the elementary school, and that's been a shift for myself.
But I was in 4 through 8,
I
I was in 4 through 8 my whole career.
I think you'd be
It was the
surprised
biggest,
of
I think I would.
the shift
I
in
think I would. And I sometimes think that this stuff makes them feel like they should be less involved. That was always my argument about Farmington High School. I always felt like Farmington High School did certain things to sort of make you feel like you shouldn't be as involved. I felt that way when my son went through here.
I think that's pretty typical of most high schools. When I think of other high schools I have experience with, that is pretty typical. Not that it's good.
I do agree, though, as to what Mr. Shagnon was saying, is this kind of gives those parents that may not necessarily have gone to any parent-teacher conferences in years past, but this one could give them an easy out. They'll just say, well, 2.5 minutes per teacher, it's not worth my time, because they'd have to take off X amount of time from work, and they feel, it just wouldn't be conducive, so therefore, I can see them turning this down as a result of just this letter.
And I think the number 4, I don't wish a conference at this time. Maybe switching it up and saying a better time for me would be.
So I think at this point, we need to stop looking at this particular letter, because I will commend the teachers for being flexible and creative with what is given. So I do ask that we maybe stop nitpicking this particular letter, so, in their defense, but.
Yes.
All I'm going to say is, this can be used, as we saw tonight, to say, you only value us for 2.5 minutes. I'm just telling you, we had one parent standing here tonight that presented it that way, and maybe no one else feels that way, but
For clarification, and I think this is written in the student-parent handbook, is a parent can request a conference with a teacher at any time.
And we do have many teachers on every
Doesn't
team,
have to be
particularly the
discussed.
7th grade team. They do have quite a few meetings with parents.
In person, plenty of time. It's just a matter of making this day successful.
okay, well, we beat it enough, I guess. Thank you. Any other public participation? Our next regularly scheduled meeting is Monday, November 6th, right here at 6:30. Thank you to those of you who viewed in tonight from home, and to those of you who came out this evening. I'll entertain a motion to go into non-public session 2. Well, it is 1 now, because we didn't have one. Under RSA 91A:3, 2A, B, and C, nominations and resignations. So moved by Mrs. Moore, and second by Ms. McElhenney. All those in favor by roll? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.